We're starting to feel a draft here at the Star in Frisco. Trade winds have been blowing. There are new cooks in the Cowboys' kitchen. And deuces are wild as we present our first mock draft of the season on this edition of The Blitz. Coming up next.
Pops out to the right, breaks a tackle. They blitz it. Prescott throws it down the right side for Lamb. Caught it! Wentz gets rid of it over the middle. It's intercepted. Back to throw, rush, sacked by Parsons. Heaves it deep down the left side for Gallup. He's got it. Touchdown!
Oh, what a wonderful time of year it is here at the Star in Frisco. This is The Blitz, your Dallas Cowboys report inside the Globe Life Studios. Bill Jones along with Kyle Youmans. The Final Four is set. Opening day in baseball is this week, but what we're really looking forward to, 1 month from Monday, April 27th, the start of the NFL draft. And on this edition of The Blitz, Kyle just can't wait. We've got the first mock draft of the season. So much going on, not only around here, but everywhere in the world of sports, it seems like, Kyle.
This is part of the fun time of year because nobody's trying to win. Nobody's trying to try and revamp after a loss. No, they're trying to put together a roster that they feel is good enough to be a contender. And the Cowboys are doing that at the moment. And I mean, I know we'll get to it in a second, but the Cowboys are being aggressive, and it's great to see for the first time in a couple of years.
They're even working on Sunday mornings. Let's take you back to last Sunday morning. That's when word came down that the Cowboys had pulled off a trade with the Houston Texans. And yes, a veteran wide receiver got here very quickly. Brandin Cooks, now a member of the Dallas Cowboys.
And this was one of those rumored trade possibilities during the trade deadline overall, because that's a big thing overall that the Cowboys have needed. They need a wide receiver. They need somebody else other than CeeDee Lamb that can take the top off and be a big play threat. You found your guy with Brandin Cooks. Last year had 700 yards receiving for a dormant Texans offense. They didn't necessarily have a solidified quarterback position. Former first-round pick, and he's been traded a number of different times. The last time he was traded, Bill, to an NFC team, they went to the Super Bowl in his first year. Just a little fun fact, not a prediction. But I'm just saying, he knows how to get to the promised land. He knows how to get to a Super Bowl. He knows how to add to an offense. He's done it with a number of different organizations. Time to do it with a star on the side of his helmet.
You know, and 49 times he's gotten to the promised land, the end zone in the NFL, and 6 1,000-yard seasons. His numbers very similar to Amari Cooper, who left this team a year ago at this time. It's almost as if the Cowboys and the Texans made a trade, because in free agency, of course, the Cowboys have lost Dalton Schultz this past week. Schultz decides to sign with the Houston Texans. So it's almost like they made a trade. Cooks comes to Dallas and Schultz goes to Houston.
And I would like that trade, I think, for the most part. And the Cowboys had to give up a couple extra, a 5th-round pick, compensatory pick, and a 6th-round pick. That's not the trade, though. Dalton Schultz goes up and he signs for the 1 year, $9 million deal. That was close to what the Cowboys offered him last year, and then he rejected that offer, instead went to go play on the franchise tag that was sitting right at $10.9 million. This year, if the Cowboys were to keep Dalton Schultz on that franchise tag, that would be up to $13.1. So a much larger number for Dalton Schultz on the franchise tag. He was very productive his last 2 years in Dallas, really emerged in 2020 with the injury to Blake Jarwin. He did everything he could to be a safety blanket for whoever was playing at quarterback. Dak Prescott, Cooper Rush, and a couple of others. But for the most part, Dalton Schultz, his one knock is that he was a average tight end in a couple of areas, but he was a productive tight end. And the end of the day, if you're an average tight end that has production, that means you're replaceable, and that's exactly what Dalton Schultz did. Went out and got his money. I congratulate him on that. He'll be a great fit with the Houston Texans. He'll probably have a good season, but for the most part, I don't think the money would have worked in Dallas.
Let's take a look at some of the other moves the Cowboys have made in the past week. And of course, Tony Pollard signed his franchise tag, by the way, on Thursday. And a running back, Ronald Jones, out of McKinney North High School in USC, has a couple of Super Bowl rings, and an offensive lineman, a deep snapper, and Dante Fowler Fowler and Cooper Rush are both returning.
See, and I love all of these moves because it's not going to move the needle, but it's going to move your depth. And for the most part, your depth is now taken care of. It puts you in a good position that if you want to in the draft, go draft the best player available, because now you've added a wide receiver as a need. We talked about Stephon Gilmore last week. He's been somebody that the Cowboys needed at the cornerback spot, having that veteran presence. They've done that in a couple areas. It sets them up for success.
All right, we're just getting started on this edition of The Blitz. We've talked about Brandin Cooks. Let's hear Brandin Cooks talk himself when we come back in just a moment.
The Dallas Cowboys Blitz, presented by Blockchain.com, is also brought to you by AT&T, official partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and by Blockchain.com. Make your crypto play today. This segment is brought to you by AT&T.
Get your spring shopping in during Market at the Star, presented by Flea Style. Come out to the Star in Frisco on Saturday, April 1st. Browse from over 50 local vendors, from fashion to home goods, jewelry, and more. Visit thestardistrict.com/events for more info. Welcome back to The Blitz. It's time to catch up with one of the newest Cowboys. Nick Eatman is doing the honors.
What's up, Cowboys Nation? This is Brandin Cooks, Cowboys' new wide receiver. And just tell me how excited you are to finally be here with the Cowboys. I know there's been a lot of talk about you joining maybe even last year, but finally they got it done.
Better late than never. I'm extremely excited, blessed for, the opportunity to come, to a worldly organization like this. I just can't wait to be able to get to work with the guys and go out and win some games.
What's been your first impression so far of just being here at the facility?
Yeah, no corners cut. They thought of every single thing that you can think of to be able to accommodate to the players. So definitely fortunate to be able to see that.
And, of course, we mentioned it before, just about almost was maybe a part of a trade last year. And I don't know how close it really was, but here now, what was it about the Cowboys that you wanted to be a part of last year, or maybe you wanted to be a part in other years?
The standard, right? You hear the Dallas Cowboys. Every household throughout the world know about it, and so to be able to put that star on your helmet is definitely a privilege. And I just wanted to be a part of something special. A great group of guys from afar, and with a great quarterback like Dak leading the way.
Changing teams is something that's not new for you. You've done it a few times. But what's the biggest key for you when you join a new team? Is it off season? Is it study? Is it playbook? All that?
I would say the biggest thing is the off season. Being able to get to know your coaches and teammates, and just coming in and showing them how you're gonna work and what you're about.
What's your level of relationship or friendship with Dak Prescott? Have you met him before? Have you talked to him since?
I met him before, a handful of times, and then also talked to him. He reached out as soon as he heard the news, and I just told him I can't wait to get to work.
What do you think about this receiving core now?
You talk about CD, Michael, and all, those guys. They've been doing it at a high level since they entered, this league, and I just want to be able to contribute, feed off one another, and go out there and win games.
Fastest 40 time you've ever had?
Fastest 40 time official was 4.33 combine.
How close are we there now?
Oh, there's no doubt I'll do it again to this day.
Yeah. And then what's the next few weeks look like here as you're going to transition here to Dallas? Or?
Yeah, my family come out today, go around, looking at neighborhoods and start to slowly but surely, get my feet set here. And, with off-season workouts coming up, to be here for that and, get a part and saturate myself with the guys.
All right, fans, you heard it. He's still got the speed. That's Cowboys' new wide receiver, Brandin Cooks.
Brandin Cooks going into his 10th season in the NFL, and the Cowboys can sure use that speed at the wide receiver position. Up next here on The Blitz, a draft prospect with some very close family ties to the Cowboys. Next.
This segment was brought to you by AT&T. This segment is brought to you by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Blitz. Bill Jones along with Kyle Youmans. Cowboys obviously could use a running back. Looking at him closely in the draft, we want Bijan. I want Bijan, but there's another running back from the Austin area who might be pretty good in Cowboys uniform as well, and Haley Sutton has more.
For so many of these young prospects, just going to the combine is an accomplishment in itself, but obviously the goal is bigger than just showing off your skills for scouts and NFL owners. Kansas State running back Deuce Vaughn might not be the biggest or even the strongest guy in this year's draft, but he's got something a little bit more special that some of these guys don't have, a connection to a certain NFL scout on the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to ask you a silly question, but have you had a chance to meet with the Cowboys yet?
I have. It was informal, and it went really, really well. It went really, really well.
Deuce Vaughn checked into the NFL Combine standing 5 foot 5 inches, weighing in at a whopping 179 pounds. He's the smallest player ever in Combine history, but hasn't let that deter him from chasing his dream.
I'd say versatility and work ethic and a grind to be great. Versatility-wise, and be able to catch the ball in the backfield, run inside, outside, be able to split out into the slot, and also have some punt return, kick return experience. And then work ethic and preparation, man, is what I pride myself on. I feel like I'm one of the best film watchers, one of the best note takers, and also one of the best workers in the weight room and on the football field, which has gotten me to this point.
Having watched the dynamic duo that was Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott last season, Vaughn noted both players as someone who he wouldn't mind learning from in his NFL career.
Tony Pollard this past year, the electricity that he brought. I mean, I watched every single game. The electricity they brought every single weekend, the big-time runs, the cuts, being able to catch the ball down the field.
But the 1-2 punch isn't his only connection to America's team. His father, Chris, has been working as an area scout for the Dallas Cowboys since 2017, which means keeping up with the Joneses is kind of his specialty.
It's been really surreal to kind of go through this process with my son being involved this year. There's definitely a lot more anxiety on my part than years past, you know, because you come to the combine and you see all these players. You've watched them on tape. You've heard what the people in the school have to say about him, but I kind of know this guy personally. There's a little bit of dad that seeps in where I don't have that type of relationship with the other guys that have been here or other guys that I've evaluated, so it's a little different.
Kind of set some of the nerves to the side, because being able to talk to him, if I had a question, if I had anything that I needed throughout my entire time in college and now to this process, he's been there for me, and I can't thank him enough.
Vaughn did meet with the Cowboys informally while in Indianapolis, and while his future is still unknown, Deuce says he wouldn't mind making Dallas his new home.
It would be huge to have a star on the side of my helmet. Growing up in Texas and then being right up the road and being able to see and playing AT&T Stadium a couple of times now, beautiful venue, and man, I wouldn't mind that at all.
Now, Deuce chose not to show off his skills at this year's NFL Combine. Instead, you can catch him at Kansas State's upcoming Pro Day happening on March 31st. For the Dallas Cowboys, I'm Haley Sutton. I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Can you imagine how popular Deuce Vaughn would be? Darren Sproles 2.0.
Yeah, and he had the nickname The Deuce is Loose at Kansas State, and I mean, that's a good way to put it. He is a phenomenal player. Probably not going to be until a day 3 guy just because of the size. 5'5", 179 isn't necessarily going to translate quickly to the NFL, but he's got enough elusiveness to do so. The thing about this running back class, though, is that there are so many names. There are good prospects. Yes, we've heard about Bijan Robinson from Texas. We've heard about Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama. But for the most part, there's a number of names in the 2nd and 3rd rounds that the Cowboys could keep an eye on.
All right, speaking of Bijan, mock draft time when we come back here on the Blitz. Kyle, please pick Bijan in the 1st round for the Cowboys. Please do it.
I'll try.
This segment was brought to you by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
The Blitz continues now. Bill Jones with Kyle Youmans, and this is the moment you've all been waiting for. Well, at least Kyle has been waiting for this moment. It's the first mock draft of the season. We got about 4 weeks, a little more than 4 weeks before the draft gets started on April 27th. And over the course of the next 4 weeks, we're going to give you some idea where the Cowboys might go. So, Kyle, Cowboys have that 26th pick in the first round. What's going on in this draft right now?
Well, first off, our producers are giving me more leeway because now I'm able to actually do a mock draft every week going up into the draft. But right now, it looks like the Cowboys are covering some holes. They've made some additions, of course, at running back, at wide receiver, at cornerback over the last week. We just hit a number of those additions. So it kind of opens things up for best player available, not only in the first round, but in the second and the third rounds. But there is some need in certain position groups along the way for the Cowboys. So this is going to be a mock draft specifically centered around the remaining needs. So I'm going to pick from these 6 positions: offensive guard, tight end, running back, defensive tackle, linebacker, and I still put wide receiver, even though they did go get Brandin Cooks. They could still possibly use another body in that wide receiver room. So starting with the first round, here are the names that are already taken. Broderick Jones goes to the Chargers at 21, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. Deonte Banks, who the Cowboys met with in Indianapolis, he is unavailable because he's gone to Baltimore. Jordan Addison, big wide receiver target. Oh no, Bijan Robinson is gone. A lot of Cowboys fans wanted Bijan Robinson to potentially fall. He's taken at Jacksonville at 24. And then Dalton Kincaid, another potential prospect, is out of there as well. A couple of other names down there at the bottom that could have been taken. So here are the 5 names that I want the Cowboys to potentially look at here. And it, of course, falls under the umbrella of those position groups. Michael Mayer, tight end out of Notre Dame. Josh Downs, wide receiver from North Carolina. Mozzie Smith, defensive tackle from Michigan. Osiris Torrance out of Mississippi State. Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State. And then Osiris Torrance out of Florida. I think the Cowboys here would specifically go to vamp up the offensive line. They would go with the interior. They would take Osiris Torrance here, and it's not necessarily a big conversation. I would probably take the tight end because you did move on from Dalton Schultz. Michael Mayer sitting right there. He's the top tight end on my board at the moment, but Torrance fits the mold of what Mike McCarthy wants to do. He wants to run the football. He wants to protect Dak Prescott. So in this pick, 26th overall in this certain scenario, Bill, I think the Cowboys go with Torrance out of Florida.
All right, second round, Cowboys pick at number 58. What names have come off the board before the Cowboys pick?
Well, here's a number of them here, and it starts with Andre Carter at 53. So these are the 5 picks before the Cowboys get on the clock. You see John Michael Schmitz. He could potentially be in that fold. Zach Carbonet, I mean, that's another guy that out of UCLA could have been a replacement at running back because that is a need for the Cowboys. But here are the 5 names that I think the Cowboys would look at in this scenario. It'd be Steve Avila, Nathaniel Dell, Sam Laporta, the tight end from Iowa, and then Keanu Benton and Devin Achane. While Achane might be the best player on the board there specifically, and he fits that running back mold for the Cowboys, I would go with Keanu Benton, or at least that's who I think the Cowboys would go through altogether. You talk about a big body in the middle. He's got that big frame. He's able to take up multiple gaps. He has some lateral ability, and he has some pass rush ability. The one thing here is that he's another 3 technique. You've spent some top 100 picks at the 3 technique the last couple of years. They may have to go back there again because of maybe the lapse of Neville Gallimore, the struggle to stop the run. He's probably the best run defender on the list still for the Cowboys, so keep that in mind as we move forward into the third round.
And in the third round, the Cowboys picking at number 90 in that round. So what names have been taken just before the Cowboys?
Here they are right here, and no tight ends go off the board here, which is solid because there's a couple wide receivers that get taken early, good ones at that lasted all the way into the 80s with Marvin Mims and Cedric Tillman. I really like Kayshon Boutte, who was also a prospect that they met with in Indianapolis. But the big thing is they did not get their tight end in the first 2 rounds. They passed on Sam Laporta. They passed on Michael Mayer in the first round. So here's where they go tight end, and I agree with it moving forward. It's Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. He put up some good production, good red zone guy. He's a solid blocker. Of course, they've already drafted some or signed some Michigan tight ends in the past, a.k.a. Sean McEwen, who has been on the roster the last 3 seasons. I think Schoonmaker kind of gets back up into that mix, and he makes a good fit for this Cowboys team as a potential Dalton Schultz replacement because he's an all-around guy. He can block, he can catch, he can impact the passing game.
Teaming with Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot and the fellow Michigan Wolverine, Sean McEwen. So there it is, our first mock draft of the draft season. And coming up next here on the Blitz, Dallas Day fast approaches, and there's one prospect who doesn't have to travel very far to get to the Star in Frisco.
The Dallas Cowboys Blitz, presented by Blockchain.com, was also brought to you by AT&T, official partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and by Blockchain.com. Make your crypto play today.
Final segment of the Blitz, your Dallas Cowboys report, and Dallas Day is coming up on Friday. This guy, Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma and Lone Star High School here in Frisco. Kyle, he doesn't have far to come for Dallas Day.
No, he scored a lot of touchdowns in the end zones that he'll be participating in Dallas Day on at the Ford Center at the Star. He played his high school football just down the road, and then, of course, played his collegiate football about 2 hours away in Norman. Phenomenal player. He's probably the biggest highlight reel catcher in the entire NFL draft.
Ran a 4.38 at the Combine. That does it for the Blitz. For Kyle Youmans, I'm Bill Jones, and we will see you again next week.